Middlekauff!
Habes!
This is that song had two drummers on it. Not a lot of people know that.
Two drummers? Sledgehammer?
Well, no, I don't know. I just, for those on the YouTube version of this podcast, we both decided to drum the beginning of that song. Welcome to another podcast to start a week. This is available in both audio. If you're listening to it, it's available on YouTube. If you're watching it, as John likes to say, it's down there in the description.
Yeah, quarantine livers, guy. People need to give them a lot of different mediums. Podcast. We've kind of just been doing a couple a week. Makes sense in quarantine
life. Did you say
life,
quarantine livers?
Well, people are just living in quarantine.
Livers.
Like livers, like living their life.
I thought you were talking about all the liver disease that's going to come out of quarantine.
No, not that too, but definitely just the quarantine life of just being stuck and watching YouTubes and listening to shit. Probably, I think it is a little harder to listen. Part of it is just there's an urgency a lot to our podcast because it's usually reacting to things like our draft podcast, our free agency podcast is really good. But for the last 2 months, just hasn't been that much pressing information. Now we thrive in that environment because we can do shit on anything. But it would have been nice to have the Masters or maybe some sweet thing happen in the Kentucky Derby, right? Or be like, damn, are the Lakers going to lose in the second round of the playoffs? I mean, I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you. We kind of like that shit around here,
Well, there is.
I thought about that last night. Like, I wonder who would have won the Masters this year. I know it's still technically going on
in November,
we think,
but. Did you see when you're watching The Last Dance Sunday night the promo for the greatest UFC card ever assembled? I think it's a pay-per-view. Is it pay-per-view or ESPN Plus?
Well, either way, it's coming up this week, right?
Saturday, right?
Where, though? Because they were just supposed to have it in, I think, L.A. a couple weeks ago. Did you see the Carnival Cruises plan on making a comeback? August 1st.
Oh, really? I just read an article today about a guy who's a singer on one of the cruises. He's stuck in his room and he's still in the Bahamas, just on his boat eating rice and beans.
I just saw CNBC tweeted out Carnival Cruise August 1st is a set date for their attempt to come back.
You think that's a full price ticket, or you get a little discount if you're an early readopter?
I need to check Ticketmaster. I'm still waiting for my refund on the Kings Pelicans. They're just it's postponed. No, guys, it's over. Send me my fucking money back.
Yeah, because if that game does happen, it won't be with fans. So,
yeah, what chances of that game happening though?
Low. Although they did just postpone the May 19th was supposed to be the lottery that got postponed, which means I expect the NBA draft has got to be delayed, right?
Well, I did
because you can't have a draft until the season ends.
I thought it was kind of crazy. My first reaction is like, Silver, you pussy. And then I realized, well, it's not in concrete that the season's over. So you can't have a draft lottery that's based on the records for teams if there's still a chance, even if you just play 5 games, right? But you're right. It's like it probably wouldn't happen at the Golden One Center, 1. And 2, if it did, some miracle, there's Middlekauff ain't going to be there in row J. Promise you that. Though, if they did say it was open, I would go.
Yeah. Before we get into the topics of the day, a couple friends of the podcast that local friends of the podcast. Oh, you don't have to live locally for all this stuff. You can order or find in your stores. Kinder's, John. Kinder's Barbecue. I found myself craving some barbecue on most days, but Friday in particular.
Did you get any?
No, I don't. I ended up getting what did I do? Oh, I made a baked ziti the other day for 10 people, but there's only 2 people eating it, so I've had baked ziti 4 days in a row. So I got to get through that first. Cinco de Mayo, John's going to be big.
Tomorrow.
I know.
Our friends at Kinder's been in business since 1946. They have, I think, 10 shops around the greater Bay Area, Northern California. Great barbecue, great sandwiches, good lunch meal. If you're driving around looking for something to eat, type in Kinder's, support them. Friends of the program. We're just trying to help our friends out.
And Evergood Sausages, which is not, I mean, that's wherever you do your shopping. I'm not sure. They're not like in every city across America, but they're in a lot of places.
They're in a lot of
A
places.
lot of grocery stores.
Definitely all over California. Costco's,
Denver,
Safeways.
I know, I looked. Seattle, Portland.
Nuggets.
Oh.
You know, partial to Nugget here, Davis, California. Sacramento, California. I remember it was a big deal when the guy that owned Nuggets when I was growing up used to have a Rolls Royce. It was like, oh, that guy made it. Yeah, I remember everyone would be like, he drives a Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
Evergood Sausage. I
don't remember seeing that guy. We both grew up in Davis, where there was this Nugget, which is just premium before the word artisan was around, right? It's just fresh bread, deli. Used to go there for lunch at school.
But that was the second one. The one by South Davis was more of a normal grocery store.
Oh, okay.
When they put the one in closer to the high school,
Pole Line Road.
That one was like on steroids. Remember, that thing was badass.
Yeah.
You get Chinese food, pizza, burritos.
It was like
it was like Whole Foods before Whole Foods.
Right. I've never saw the guy in the Rolls Royce, but I guarantee if I had seen the guy in the Rolls Royce, what my dad would have said $100 he would have said, yeah, but how much what do you think it costs to change that guy's oil? It was always about.
Right.
It wasn't about the cost of the vehicle. It was always about the residual cost that he'd bring up. It's like, yeah, you think you got that Mercedes, but you know what that oil change costs?
You know, the thing is that the Rolls Royce, when you say it out loud, it wasn't a new one, right? At the time, like 94. It wasn't whatever the year was. It was from like 1968.
It was a classic.
You know,
Wow.
Yeah, it was a classic. It's a power move.
Yeah, it is a power move. Wow.
It's like the dude who played him. The Hearst Castle guy, did Leo play that guy? Remember the movie I'm talking about? Hearst Castle got shot and swimming in the water.
Shot swimming in the water.
Yeah, remember Leo was in that movie about the girlfriend. You know, the Hearst Castle. He's driving the old school, like in the 1800s, and he's like swimming laps and gets shot. The Hearst Castle used to be over by San Luis Obispo, famous little area that had all the. I don't know.
He was at Hearst. Oh, you mean like the famous book?
Yeah, what was the movie?
About
he did
the
it.
Book?
You know the movie where Leo gets shot by the chick?
Yeah, it's
or
one of the great pieces of American literature. He gets shot at the end. I don't remember the end of that book. I didn't.
Does Leo get shot or the other guy gets shot? Someone gets shot.
Leo dies, right?
Leo dies. Yeah.
I mean, it's right up there with Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah, it's one of those.
I was just talking about this the other day because my wife was saying to me that I don't like that movie, but I do like that movie.
It is kind of weird. It's not psychedelic, but it's a little, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of got the Leo Shutter Island a little bit feel, where it's just got a lot going on. Is he dreaming this? Is this real? What's really going on? Whatever.
No, not whatever, because everyone is gonna. This is gonna be the comments on YouTube if we don't remember the name of this piece of American literature. Why can't I find it on his IMDb? The Great Gatsby, John.
The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby.
That's important stuff. Somebody's reading it right now.
You're right. That is kind of a famous novel.
My mind's not in literature right now. Although we did, you know, what I read every day is every Monday at least is Albert Breer. So John Lynch, who we talked about him in a YouTube video about Brandon Ayuk, which you can go watch among other things, wrote. It did feel good to read all the 40. I don't know about you. It felt good to me to read all of the 49ers quotes about Tom Brady over the last week or so. Lynch talked about it to Breer. He said, yes, the Niners did consider Brady. Brady was interested in coming to San Francisco. The Niners felt like they owed it to themselves to investigate the possibility, given who Brady really is. So they looked at his tape. They were impressed. They also did a deep dive on Garoppolo. If you could get a premium return for Garoppolo and add that to, and then add that to Brady, would it be worth walking away from the guy you built around? We went back and took a hard look at Jimmy, Lynch said. We grinded for a period of 3-4 days. We both came back, him and Kyle, and said, you know what? We've got the long-term answer right now. We feel strongly about it, as enticing as it is. We had a responsibility to take a look. We told Jimmy that. We talked to Jimmy and told him what we did. He appreciated that. The great news is we came away more convinced than ever that he's our guy. I think we probably both felt validated reading this because we both said at the time, if Tom Brady's considering you, which of course he was, you would think considering the 49ers, you have to take a look at it. Even if you come away with Jimmy, that's fine. But it's great. Like, you know, the other thing, just thinking about it, you can't make the same mistake again. And the mistake that Kyle Shanahan has admitted that he made is that he did not really watch that much Patrick Mahomes coming out in 2017.
Yeah.
So when it comes to quarterbacks specifically, you owe it to everybody, and you owe it to Jimmy.
Not only Patrick Mahomes, I think he kind of like Watson. They just were focused on Kirk Cousins. It was kind of like a 1-year gap year. The way the NFL works, I think pro sports like this in general, this always comes up during the draft. Well, if you already have a quarterback, you have to evaluate the quarterbacks. Or you already have this. You always evaluate every draft like you have the number 1 overall pick. Because as things change, you guys get in the league, you want to know, well, we really like this guy coming out. You see it all the time. A couple years later, all these players are available. Well, it's like if they call you about Leonard Fournette, and this is on a much lower level, you've done the work.
Yeah.
Well, part of your pro scouts, you evaluate every player in the league every year. Because at any moment, if you're the fucking 49ers, you might get a call from like the Minnesota Vikings. Like, you guys need a safety. Would you like Harrison Smith, or would you be interested? And if you have updated grades, now sometimes, depending on the time of the year, you're not super focused. Like, think about the Niners. They wouldn't have been super locked in on the Patriots this year. They didn't play them. They weren't playing common opponents. That wasn't their AFC matchup. Even though Tom was going to be an unrestricted free agent, you have a young quarterback who was playing really well that you wouldn't even – and I think most people in the league would just kind of assume like Tom's going to go back to New England. It's just not something that would have been in their focus, and then they make it to the Super Bowl, and then it kind of became a story that are like, hey, we should look at this and do like a legit deep dive. I mean, Lynch goes do it. Adam Peters does it. Kyle Shanahan, LaFleur's brother, those guys just go in and just pick out like 6-7 games the last 2 years and just see how he looked. Because really, 5 years ago, that doesn't mean a goddamn thing right now. Like, what does he look like right now? And relative to Jimmy, and this was before, remember, when that kind of gained steam, definitely at the Super Bowl, because I asked Albert Breer about it. That was like pre-Corona, right? I mean, Corona was out there, but it wasn't like going to wipe out OTAs.
You're talking about the Combine, yeah.
I'm talking about the Combine. Like, the Combine's lucky they got like 2 weeks before. What if the Combine would have been like mid-March? It would have been fucked. It would have changed everything dramatically. And that was a major storyline at the Combine. They were getting asked about it. It would have been it would have been a no-brainer where you could probably go, yeah, no OTAs. We can't even risk the transition. Where it was an easy transition for the Tampa Bay. Like, they were going all in whether OTAs exist or not. For the Niners, it's like, well, Jimmy knows our stuff. He's still good enough. But to think that they didn't have like long, hard conversations about it, as some people wrote about, like, this is so stupid. That's just not the way the NFL works.
Well, also, it's not stupid.
It's not. It'd be stupid if they said no, we didn't look.
It's called malpractice.
Yeah, this is Tom Brady 1, and you should always look at all your options.
Especially, you're right. It is kind of now. I don't think this is why they did it. They did it because it was a real option for them. Because Brady would have really considered them. Because he'd be crazy not to. But there is just a little bit of CYA, right? Cover your ass in it. Again, I don't think it's why they did it. But what happens if, and I'm not predicting this, 12 months from now, Jimmy Garoppolo just had a year where he did not take the next step like we thought he would. In fact, he takes a step back. I mean, crazier things have happened in the NFL. And people are going like, boy, I mean, we all thought Jimmy was going to be good, but in retrospect, how did you not consider Brady? Maybe Brady leads the Bucs to the NFC Championship game or something.
It could come back up. I'd say the difference is financially, though, they're not really tied to Jimmy. It's a year-by-year contract. Now, $250 would have complicated it. Like, could you have seen the Niners, if they were interested in Tom, being interested in doing that? I wonder. Like, that's a lot of money to guarantee that type of cash.
Would
that's an angle
come there for less? Would Brady have come to San Francisco for less money?
Might have.
I'm just saying you can't have Garoppolo take a step back and then everyone revisits the quotes where you said, nah, we weren't interested in Brady after Brady throws 28 touchdowns or something for the Bucs.
100%. And I'll say this about the Niners. They have been very, very candid on everything they do. My first reaction when I saw the quote about Brandon Ayuk, they would have drafted him at 13, I kind of thought it was bullshit. Then I've listened to John Lynch talk about 7 million people. He told Peter King, he's like, the last week going into the draft, you've got all your information. You take in all your information from everyone. And I think it used to bother me. Like, why won't this guy give his opinion? I remember whether it was, and they would, but like when I was in a meeting with Pat Hill, he's ultimately just taking in information from other people, using then his mind and then making an ultimate decision. In the NFL, it's definitely like that. Like, Howie takes in all the information, or Andy, and then he's the ultimate decision maker and the owner. It's a big thing in Ethan's book, right? It was like the scouts would be like, why doesn't Lacob ever say who he likes? It's not really his job. He's at the fucking top of the pyramid. He's paying you for your opinion, so then he can take it all and then give the go-ahead.
Right.
Well, that to me is part of like, what you have to do in this situation. So John was saying that like we get all the information from everyone, the coaches, my right-hand guys, and then me and Kyle just kind of talk it out like, would you be okay doing this? And he's like, it would have been, listen, I'm no idiot. It would have been a freak out, right? You took Brandon Ayuk. And the thing that I can't get past, like, is that if CeeDee Lamb was off the board, or would you have taken him over CeeDee Lamb? Because that would have been more if CeeDee Lamb was off and you took him, that would have been less controversial.
There's a difference between the way the draft played out. There was a scenario where we would have considered taking him at 13 in this particular draft, in this particular version of this draft. I think what he was saying was...
And he hasn't been specific with that. He's kind of leaving it open.
Yeah,
and I do think he's being truthful. They liked him a shitload.
The way I interpret that, John, is don't you think they did a million, maybe not a million, but you know how maybe it still exists where you can go on ESPN.com and do like the lottery button. You hit the lottery and you see the way it... I bet they had a version where CeeDee Lamb is gone, Javon Kinlaw is gone, and they're like...
100%.
Maybe they... Yeah. And they're like, you know what? In this scenario where these guys are gone, are we willing to do this if we can't trade back? And I do believe that there were scenarios where that's the case.
But it used to. I used to think that's so like it's kind of chicken shit. Like what do you think? Are you gonna say it or you don't have to say it? But then you realize like I thought the Ethan book really crystallized. No, that's not really their job. Their job is because at the end of the day they're going to make the decision. So you don't know what they're gonna think. Like if Howie Roseman didn't say in the meeting, like, I love Jalen Reagor, but that's who he picked, I know exactly what he thought, right?
But
we
also,
you don't. They like.
If we went back through all of Howie Roseman's draft picks, first-round draft picks, there are some he loved and felt a lot of conviction about, and there are others he didn't like as much, right? He didn't love all first-round picks the same. One great quote in the Ethan book, I thought, was from Bruce Frazier. They're talking about Harrison Barnes. I don't think Bruce's quote is about Harrison per se, but Bruce is just talking about players and how the gray area, like you got to be able to make decisions in the gray area where it's not cut and dry. A lot of basketball happens in gray area.
The guy might not be open on the back cut. Can you get it through? Can you get by the guy?
They're just a playbook. There's just that's where the great stuff happens. Like, can you navigate the gray area? This is not exactly what Bruce is talking about, but the point is, they might like Javon Kinlaw more than they like Solomon Thomas. I don't know. Maybe they like Solomon Thomas more than they in that moment. Maybe they like Solomon more than they like Kinlaw now. Who knows? But
on the draft night, Solomon Thomas's draft night.
On Solomon Thomas's draft night. Yeah, I'd be interested like how they would compare those two. But the point, what I'm saying though, is just that you have to prepare for all these different scenarios. And so it's not chicken shit to say, and I know you're not saying it is, but it's not chicken shit to say, hey, there are some scenarios where we like this guy enough to take him at 13. There are other scenarios where maybe we wouldn't have drafted him, right? CeeDee Lamb takes it to who knows what those other scenarios were. And they end up trading out instead of trading up.
But I'm going to tie this back to Tom. I think part of the reason it takes 3 or 4 days, because if you go, well, if I'm Kyle Shanahan and I have 3 or 4 guys I really trust on my staff, right? McDaniels, LaFleur, let's just say there's, Welker, who knows them well. What if I just go, hey, guys, it's going to take some time because we're in the middle of doing all this other shit. Can you guys, over the next 48 hours,
Salah?
do a deep dive on Tom Brady? Well, John Lynch, and I'll do one too. John does one, Adam Peters and Mayhew. And then we'll reconvene while we're doing other shit. Just work this into your fucking daily plan, and we'll talk about it in 3 days. So it's going to be a long process. And then you listen to everyone's opinions, and then you do have to just go into a room when it's just you two and go, what do you think? Because it's on you. Like the decision, if Welker wants a guy or Welker doesn't want a guy, and I know this as a scout, well, I ain't getting credit or I ain't getting shit on if we miss. Like it is, and I remember he used to kind of say that, like how he used to say that to me, and I see it now with these guys. It's so true. Like they are the guys taking the heat, right? It's just no one gives a shit. Like when they were winning, Adam Peters wasn't getting shit on. Just like when they were losing. I mean, now when they're winning, let's be honest, Kyle and John are getting all the fucking credit.
Well, if Adam Peters was the guy pushing for...
Adam kind of is too, like in the league or whatever. People think he's good.
But I'm just saying, like, if Adam Peters was the guy who's like, I'm telling you guys, Solomon Thomas, this is the guy. That's not cover for John Lynch. Like, at the end of the day, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are the ones that drafted him, right?
Yeah, and they might know who liked him and who didn't like him, but they're the ones when the fifth-year option doesn't get picked up.
Well, that's the other one again, to the Ethan book, right? Because he does do a great job of, like, just talking about the process. Jerry West was like, we can't trade Clay. Well, Jerry West also loved Deion Waiters, right? There's just constant tab that everybody has. And your hits are more important than your misses, because we assume you're hitting 500. You're not hitting 500.
Well, the one thing you realize, I just big book on tape guy. I had to embrace. I'm like, I'm not gonna read probably as much as I want to, but I want all this information of all these cool books. I hear all these people talk, but when I get them and I just consume them like a podcast, I do consume them. So like everyone talked about this Bob Iger book. I just got the Bob Iger book, and one thing Bob Iger starts this thing off by was like, you look at my resume, and he's like, you're gonna see some great things, but don't let it fool you. Like I fucking had some major failures, and no matter who you are, Warren Buffett to Jerry West to fucking Jordan, like you're just going to have some misses. And that's where I think, but a decision that is like the decision to move off Jimmy for Tom would have been bigger than any Buckner, Kinlaw, Ayuk decision, right? That would have been a monumental organizational decision in the history of the modern day Walsh forward San Francisco 49ers. It would have been one of the biggest. Like the Tampa thing wasn't that crazy. Like everyone in football history would have got rid of Jameis for Tom. But given that the Niners just went to the Super Bowl, and given Tom's age, and given Jimmy, like for those of us that actually watch Jimmy, not just putting the playoffs, the 2 playoff games in the NFC that were statistically did nothing. And listen, I was there on the Minnesota game, and I'm sitting in the stands, and when he throws that pick, it was like that pick was terrible. Like that pick was really bad. But you watch the games down the stretch, the Saints game, the Rams game, the Seattle game. Like it was big boy, big time shit. So it's just that you have to put it all into context. And I think sometimes we forget, like, and I say it all the time during the draft, you go to the combine and you crush it. Well, you forget about the shitty last 2 months of the guy's football season because you're like, oh, this guy's a great athlete. Just like vice versa. You go to the combine, and this is where I think Lynch was right. If Ayuk runs really fast, fuck, maybe he does go in the top 20 because he was clearly liked in the league and he was like a fringe top 35 player. Well, what's the difference if you're a top 35 player? The difference of a fast 40 and a slow 40 is pretty big.
Yeah.
Just like the difference of Tom. What if Tom's narrative on his season had been different, right? They hadn't lost in the first round. They got to the AFC Championship game and he dueled it out with Mahomes, but this year he lost. I think there would have been a lot of like, fuck.
He might be back in New England.
He might be back in New England / I think he would have put more pressure on a team like the Niners to like, it would have been he could have said with a straight face, like, listen, it was because right now I think he can say with a straight face, we did our work. It was a long period of time. But I think when we talked it out, it wasn't that tough a decision. If Tom's, because to me, the lasting image of the season was the pick he throws in that Miami game to the dude that used to play for Utah that Chip Kelly once drafted. I forget his name.
Eric Rowe?
I think it was, Eric Rowe, who then got traded to New England, who's now with Flores. Yeah. And Tom just throws this little bunny that You've
never seen him throw that, yeah.
When you think of the Tom Brady fuck-ups,
no.
It's not that.
No.
And then the playoff game where you're like, God, they're just off, and he was bad. I think it's easier to justify he's old, he's over it, where just the year previously his numbers were different. I think we viewed him a little differently. But it's I do have a lot of respect, and I shit on him sometimes, but I think the decision-making process is just harder sometimes than I think we think in general. And when you pull the trigger, and we'll talk about this as we're in quarantine for the next month of the Niners decision, some of these big picture decisions. You saw the Cowboys do the Dalton thing. Like every decision is like can have pretty big implications one way or the other, right? And I think the Ethan book did a great thing of like that. They didn't trade Clay for Kevin Love, but that was and Draymond, but that was a really polarizing, easy decision later.
They didn't trade Steph and Clay for Chris Paul. How about that one?
Only because Chris said, fuck you, I'm not doing it.
How about that? By the way, for people who maybe aren't West Coast or don't follow us regularly, Ethan Sherwood Strauss, the book about the Warriors that just came out like 2 weeks ago.
But I also think like, we talk so much about drafts because they really are great. Like their conversation dramatically changes once we know whether the fucking player hit or missed. It's easy to go. I saw someone today tweeted this out. You know that when Michael Jordan's mom forced him to go with Nike, their stock was worth 11 cents. I mean, I bet if you check today, it's like $80 or whatever. It's so easy to do that conversation all these years later. Just like, I can't believe that the Browns and even the fucking Bills traded off Mahomes and Watson. Well, at the time, it was actually crazier that Andy went up and got Mahomes. I think it was dramatically crazier, right?
Yeah, do you know, like, I think I texted you this the other day because I was looking back at it just for whatever. Mayock's big board that year, Mayock's first big board had Trubisky as the number one quarterback on it. His second big board, I think he had Watson as the number one quarterback. So
because he used to do every position top fives.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't do mocks. So like we look back and we go,
which is very NFL-like, which is cool.
True, it's very NFL. What?
Well, I'm saying it's actually a cooler,
it's more real,
exercise for us talking about it now. Like that's meaningful.
Right.
Knowing who you had above who.
So he's a guy who we both think is a good. Like he had Khalil Mack when no one else realized how good he was. He had Khalil Mack at the top of Khalil's draft, right? I think we both think
he had Mariota. He had Mariota over Jameis.
That one's lose-lose. It turns out.
Well, I wouldn't give up on Jameis yet.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. But the point is we talk about the Trubisky thing, and I think I even do it. Like, it's like, how could you draft that guy? But it wasn't that. It was – some people thought it was crazy, but not everybody thought it was crazy. It wasn't universally crazy to take Mitchell Trubisky. So
the other thing is, like, the difference with the draft and the free agency – like you have a shitload of information on Jimmy and Tom, right? I mean, Tom, fuck, no quarterback's ever had more information. Like you know everything about him. The draft is a huge guessing game because Peter King asked Lynch, he's like, how you feeling? He's like, well, you know what I learned after my first year? It's meaningless how you feel after the draft. You don't know a goddamn thing, and he's right.
I think I found
you sign a free agent like. Cowboys know what they're getting into Amari. I think they're hoping he improves or whatever, but they know. Just like the 49ers know, you know what? We got Jimmy. He's under this really team-friendly contract now that we control. It's an easier move to make while still being like, we can still be really good with this guy. It's not like we're pussing out. Fuck, we're just, as Juszczyk tweeted like a month ago, through the first three quarters, he was the MVP of the game. So it's the narrative dramatically changes, and rightfully so, based on results.
Yeah.
The whole Jordan documentary is based on results, right? It's easy to fuck, he kicked Clyde's ass, then beat him. Oh, he got Charles, then he beat him. Oh, he got this guy, then he beat him.
That's one thing I think, we'll talk about the doc, but one of the things watching it that Costas does so well is he gives you the full big picture context. Like he's previewing games in the moment with like the full big picture context, seeing the whole big picture, the way we'll view this thing 30 years later. Yeah, it's awesome. It's easy.
I texted you this last night, and I've always been fascinated by this. The guys that go bald, like Marv Albert, who clearly went bald in like his 30s, does he at night when he goes home, does he take that thing off and just look at himself, or does he never look at himself in the mirror with it off?
I think it stays on.
You just keep it. You just glued on.
I don't know how pieces work, but.
Well, see, I don't know if he like the thing that he had on in some of those pictures from like the mid-90s, early 90s. It didn't look also like the side hair. It's almost like he shaved everything and just plopped that thing on top.
There was
but he is a legend. Haberman once ran into him, over by North Beach.
That's right. Said hello, shook his hand. He was looking for something. He was in town for the NBA Finals, I think.
I mean, how old in 92? He was probably like 50 years old, right? I mean, it's not like he's some spring chicken.
No, I think he had to be a little younger than that.
How old do you think he is now? 70?
My guess.
That was 20. That was 25 years ago.
Yeah,
so
I'm
that
guessing Marv is. Maybe I would guess 74.
Yeah, he's older than you think.
78.
No, he's 78.
So he was in
So
his 40s
92,
then.
almost 30 years ago. Yeah, he's late 40s.
Yeah, look younger actually.
I thought Costas looked really good.
Well, Costas
has real hair though.
Okay, great. God, Costas look good. Young. All right. Should we move on? Anything else on this?
Oh yeah, it's evergreen topic.
Yeah,
it's always talk about. But you're right. Though, like this is something. If Jimmy, I don't know, regresses, just doesn't really get better, and Tom has some historic year, you and I will talk about it because it is a fair conversation, and you know what, they will too. This is part of sports. When you make a decision based on taking a guy or keeping a guy, the results, though I agree it was the right decision in the moment. If Tom goes on this year to win the Super Bowl for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we could have a legitimate conversation going, they fucked up. They should have got Tom Brady, because I think it's fair to say that if they said, Tom, we want you to be your quarterback, he would have chose the 49ers over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think it's fair to just somewhat assume that. Now, you could counter me and go, well, his family's on the East Coast. He's talked a lot about that. Arians, it's not
pretty
crazy.
Good yeah, I mean, I would think it'd be a hard. I wouldn't be shocked if he still picked the Bucs, but I would have to give the Niners the advantage.
I do think it would have been a
team.
His parents live here, guy. His mom's been in poor health. I think this would have been the one team maybe he would have sucked it up for, to live on the West Coast where they don't ideally want to live. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram. I mean, whatever house he's staying at for Jeters, his kids was doing backflips. It's just, I mean, it looks fucking
It does look incredible. But like, to your point, right? Montana goes to the Chiefs. The Chiefs go 11-5, win the AFC West. The Niners go 10-6, win the NFC West year one. Like, you can't do that deal if you're the Niners and then go 8-8, and then the next year they go 13-3 and win the Super Bowl. But you better go 13-3 to win the Super Bowl if you're going to choose somebody other.
Those 2 years, Joe was nipping at their heels, right? Boom. Now, Steve, from about 92 to 97, became a top 5 guy in the league, and it never became a question. Now, the difference is, I think there are similarities. Actually, you could say there are actually a lot of similarities. Joe, like Tom, at the end of the road on basically, would you say Tom's on hole 18? Or, I mean, minimum, he's on like the fairway on hole 17 right now, right? And you could say Jimmy.
I mean, if he's on the if he's still on 17, John.
Okay, let's say he's at minimum putting on hole 17. Where's Jimmy? Hole 6? Hole 7?
Time will tell. Yeah.
But I just mean,
if he's got a good long career, he's
like with Steve. You go, well, I think we can get this guy for another 8-10 years.
Well, and you saw it in the Jordan thing, right? Jordan wins his second championship at 30. He's got a lot of time. Like, did a lot of winning after the age of 30. Won 4 titles after that, right? Like, crazy 30, we tend to think, like, if you're going to win 6, you better have a couple by the time you're.
Agreed.
I don't know. If you've got 2 at 30, we probably think you're not getting to 6 if you've got 2.
Think about Steph, Clay, and all those guys had them all before 30.
Yeah, Jordan didn't win his first until year 7 in the league, I think.
And he had also, because he'd been a 3-year college guy, he had a lot of miles from like 81 to 90. Right. Think about just all the games he had played in. Now, he also had in the back pocket, he had won a natty at North Carolina.
Hit
so
the game-winning shot
as a winner, as a true freshman. No big deal.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is the we'll talk about Derek Carr. That is the win and loss. That is the ultimate stat. And Carr did a piece with Vic Tafur, exclusive sit down, said a lot.
Zoom, probably.
You think? Think it was a Zoom? Maybe it was a Zoom.
Are you allowed to do sit downs in quarantine? Oh yeah, less than 10 people.
Oh yeah, there definitely wasn't in person. No way.
Yeah. Because Carr's in Vegas now. I didn't know that, but he's already moved there.
I didn't realize that either. The house is done. Is Gruden next door yet?
I don't know. I was told by Raiders employees. What's weird is they were gonna move like in June. Like the coaching staff and everyone, because they were gonna have They weren't gonna have OTAs there. So it didn't quite add up to me. It's like, Derek, what are you doing there? But I don't know.
Makes sense. Settle in. Just be ready to roll whenever things start.
Well, once OTA, but what if OTAs had been happening? Would he act?
Yeah. What'd you think? I mean, I think what's clear, there was this, and we talk about it, anyone that's in the Raiders Twitter world, you see our buddy Josh Dubow, who covers the team, always tweeting stats and getting in arguments. People are always yelling at him. He tweets positive and negative, but people, whatever. This is an ongoing debate in the NFL. It's an NFL topic, not just a Raiders topic, right? Like who's Carr better than? Who would be better than him? There's some stats that say he leads the league in some categories. Others that say there's this team is 7-9, 4-12, 6-10 the last 3 years. I think we have reached the point now where the only stat that's going to matter with them is how many wins do you have? And that doesn't matter for the head coach because the head coach is coming into year 3 of a 10-year contract.
Yeah, and to me, the narrative, and this is kind of the overwhelming thing that Vic dives into, is how do you handle everyone talking about you? They're always going to replace you, the Tom Brady thing, and Derek tries to poo-poo it like he always felt good about himself. If you just did most polarizing players in the NFL, I do think Derek's pretty high up on the list. Now, we could nitpick, like Lamar's polarizing, like can he get over the hill in the playoffs and stuff? Yeah, I think Carr, like Odell, some of it has to do with, like, we can nitpick like Russell Wilson or Carson Wentz, but these guys are proven. These guys are elite blue chippers. Russell's won a chance. I don't even think Russell you'd put in that category. But let's use Carson Wentz. Like, it's clear. When Carson's on the fucking field and he's healthy, he's fucking good. Right? I think Derek, he has the physical traits, but is he a guy that I can win 10 games with? I know people in the NFL that think he can't. And I know people in the NFL that thought he played really well last year and just physically looked good, though there are little things I think when you don't study him in a vacuum on tape, like when you just get a guy and do his cut-ups on all 22, he might look different than if you were just like me, you, anyone listening that watched a lot of Raider games. You just watch his career. Because I did feel over the last couple years, it's just left a little be desired. And part of it, guy, goes back to several years ago when I saw the best of him, and he was one of the best fucking players in the league. Because he has the arm, and he's a good athlete.
Right.
And he can make every goddamn throw known to man. But then there are just times like, I'm sorry, Derek, I can't give you a hall pass when you throw the ball into the fucking ground on 4th and 5. And I get it. It's like, well, the screen got failed. So why don't you just take the ball, look at John, and just fucking walk to the sideline? Like, I understand why all the fans shit on him. Or multiple times in the last 2 years, reaching the ball out and especially the second time against Green Bay, like he's done some crazy dumb shit.
So Vic asked him about the 2 fourth down throwaways. Some fans can't let go of your 2 fourth down throwaways. The one in 2018, the one last season, have those plays stuck with you also? Well, I can let them go. We're talking about 2 plays over the course of how many I've had in my career. I do think that's the kind of stuff that Aaron Rodgers gets away with. I shouldn't even say gets away with. That's the kind of thing that doesn't become a topic if you just win. If you're winning, that's not a topic.
Isn't that the point of this whole thing? Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Aaron
really.
Rodgers wins.
What I'm saying is, it's not really about those plays, right? It's just that those plays feel to a lot of people like they represent something. Coming up short, not being able to. Maybe it's.
Well,
not
here's
being
what
able to win in moments that feel like they're really, these are the do or die moments at Kansas City, at New York.
I forget the ball that he threw into the ground, who they were even playing, but they were not a team. Like, no one looked at it like, this is a playoff game, right? It's a fucking afternoon game. It's doing a quarter of the ratings the Niner game are doing in Northern California. It's not a nationally televised game. Most people beside Middlekauff, fucking Haberman, and some Raider fans and whoever the team they were playing were watching that thing. Now, here's where I'd counter and go, if Aaron Rodgers, guess what Aaron Rodgers games typically end up on? I don't know. Jim Nance is there. Sunday night, Monday Night Football. If he had done that and the Packers had done that, it would be by far, and rightfully so, the number one story of the day the next day, right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, it'd be a big story. But but it wouldn't last like this. It wouldn't be
no, because
something
then he'd make the playoffs, he'd go to the NFC Championship. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
it's like, you guys don't do anything to win.
It's just it's not really about those plays is my ultimate point for people.
Well, because I think people use that in their argument, like, is this guy good enough to get us to be a winning team?
It's just a shorthand.
And listen, you and I have known Derek for fucking a long time. We've watched his whole goddamn career. I ebbed and flowed because there was 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm just being unemotional about this, I thought, like, this guy has a chance to be a top 6-7 quarterback in this league. And then I think there have been some bad habits, not all of his fault. They've had a lot of turnover. They've had some weird shit happen. His best friend on his team, the best player that's been on the fucking Raiders beside Charles Woodson over the last 20 years, gets traded. He's experienced some weird shit. But I also think that I just watch him and go, I see more now like physical attributes than I do good player. Now, I think he's going to be in a better position to succeed this year. And that's why I think there's the pressure on him. We talk about if it's just bad again or the stats, like you can score 25 points in the NBA every night and we can view you like, yeah, this guy's not a winner. Like this guy's not doing winning shit. So you can throw again 28 touchdowns and 6 picks. And if your team goes 6 or 7 wins and I just go, yeah, when you were in some big time spots throughout the year, late in the game, like it's, and I also understand, like I watch you in Kansas City and in the cold, you're terrible. And that's an element of his career that he can only shake if he just gets over the hump. Like that's part of narratives that, you know, stay with players, right? Usually aren't just pulled out, that people don't pull them out of their ass. Like that one is statistically justified. I remember last year, right, going to that Chiefs game, the last 6 or 7 games, just the numbers were atrocious. And then he goes to that Chiefs game, they lose 40-9. He throws multiple picks. One's a pick 6. The Honey Badger's like, yeah, we thought if we get him off his second read, it was a wrap. Honey Badger gets the first pick that like he could have closed his eyes to catch.
Well, like I remember you and I have talked about this for a
long
time.
But it's not like the Chiefs have owned him. He's beat them a bunch in Oakland, right? With Andy Reid as the coach.
It's hard when it looks like that, though. Like I remember always feeling like can LeBron win a championship was stupid because I remember watching him lose going, he's carrying – these guys only have a shot in hell because of this guy, right?
And it's clear he was the best player in the league. It's like, what are you guys talking about?
But when you play in those games, that's how it has to look. So, I mean, you look – and I'm – just for the record, like I have not
You're saying a blowout loss?
Yeah, I'm saying that's really where you go, okay – even if that's the bigger narrative because the black and white result was an L, I watched it and I don't think it's because this person lacks something or can't do it. And I think that's where that cold weather stat that Jack Del Rio referenced always comes into play. And that's, you know, so it might be win 10 games or just, you know, you lose that game 34-31 and you make plays and you just get beat by Mahomes. Okay, whatever. But it can't. The combination of not being good enough to make the playoffs now 3 straight years and in those big games not having a shot, like that's what they have to overcome. And what I was going to say, though, for the record, I have not sold my Derek Carr stock because there are a lot of things, like you said, like last year was bad. There was 21 touchdowns, 8 picks, 70% completion percentage. If the team's just better, if they're better on defense, why can't they go from 7-9 to 9-7, and 10-6.
Yeah, no, I'm with because he's
but it
physically
does feel
talented.
This is when it's got to happen now.
I would say the difference though is like you said, LeBron. I think you could use before Phil fucking won the Masters. It was so clear that like LeBron, Phil, or even like I'd say Carson Wentz is pretty polarizing. Like no one in the league and 90% of fans go, yeah, that guy's a freak, right? The talent is just immense. Phil was, Phil and LeBron much more accomplished.
Yeah, the body of work of winning, even though it wasn't the ultimate win, was.
Carson's probably a bad example. It'd have to be an older player, like a Phillip Rivers or a guy like that had won a lot and just played well. And even he's pretty polarizing. I think a lot of people, though, with Derek would just say with a straight face, like, yeah, he's not even a top 10 quarterback in the league. You know, that's the thing. It's like he's not even one of the best players anymore. You know, he had the 1 year, and the more years you stack on that, you go, that was an outlier season, right? That's not the norm. You know, this is what
you're right.
Like
what comes
Watson
now
balls
will
every
determine.
year. Mahomes balls every year.
Yeah.
Russell balls every year. Like good players just ball most years. Like you.
To me, baseball home runs is the easiest way. Is the stat we always right? Did you hit 30 home runs 6 years in a row, or did you hit 50 once, Brady Anderson? Like that to me is the easiest stat that we go. Was it an outlier, or is this who you are? Did you hit 20 home runs for 7 years in a row, or did you have 1 year where you hit 25?
I think Derek can really change a lot of narratives this year about himself by having a good year that contributes to winning.
Yeah.
To me, if he has one of these, 30 touchdowns, but he throws, 7 picks, but it's just a lot of like hollow touchdowns late in games. They go 7-9 again. No one's going to think anything differently. If anything, people are just going to double down. It'd be hard to go like 30-7, but let's say like
it'd be hard to go 30-7 and have 7 wins.
Let's say a 24-9, and some yards and some nice touchdowns, but it was just a couple of their big wins came with like Jacobs going for 150, and then they finished 3rd or 4th in their division. Like I think it'll only validate, and rightfully so. Like eventually, everyone loves the quarterback win-loss stat is not a quarterback stat, but there's a reason. If you just go all the list, like why do all the top guy? Why Drew Brees, Steve Young, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, fucking Mahomes, just win. These guys just win, right? And then it's like when you really nitpick, like why is Cousins? Why is this? Even Rivers, like we can argue about Rivers all day because he's a polarizing player and he should be. But like, is Drew Brees really that polarizing? Is Tom Brady really that? Is Russell Wilson polarized? No. Just guys, he's starting quarterback. You're gonna win the majority of your games. Just that's a fact.
Yeah, I would love somebody to tell me, like, how good was Archie Manning? Because he played for the Saints for 10 years, basically, right? And the Saints were the Aints. They were terrible. Now, like, he had 18.
Wasn't he more runner than passer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
which is kind of ironic because his two kids were not mobile.
We can't use stats from the 70s and compare them to stats today. And that is ironic. Cooper Manning was probably turns out the mobile one probably. But 18 touchdowns, 21 picks, 10 and 12, 6 and 16, 7 and 20, 17 and 16, 15 and 20, 23 and 20.
I think you have to focus on like the last 30 years. Like who's a player? It happens a lot in basketball, right? Where you go, was Mitch Richmond a little overrated? Because,
but
like,
but just quarterback, how many guys put up awful numbers at quarterback and just return as the quarterback for
it doesn't
years?
happen. You just get replaced. How many guys play well?
Yeah, I shouldn't say put up awful numbers. I mean lose and keep coming back. Yeah.
Well, the stat was only a guy with 0 playoff appearances through his first 7 years was David Carr. It was starter in Houston. Like David Derrick
got to start for 7. Oh wow.
They have the record for least team success and continue to start.
Wow.
So it just gets back to like I understand, and I understand why Derrick wouldn't understand because he's in it, but he should be a polarizing player. It's a unique set of circumstances. Usually you just get replaced, or usually you just would have got over the hump. And when I say over the hump, I just mean, they made the playoffs like twice in 7 years, right? Raiders never make the playoffs. And typically on a team like that, like the Browns, just churning, right?
And the year they did, we thought they were actually in good position, but he was hurt and didn't play.
I know.
We felt like that was a good team.
But then I'd counter and go, because if he was here, you'd be like, you see what happens when I was healthy and we had a talented team. Yeah. I'd say, yeah, well, I don't think he'd look the same since then. And remember, one of the big stats that year was like he was, and this gets to this is like a little collegiate, with Joe Burrow or Tua. It's like, yeah, they never, because when we were talking about Tua, you go, God, when he just has a pocket, there ain't a fucking soul around him. He's just throwing BBs to these 4 guys that look like Jerry Rice meets Deshaun Jackson meets Randy Moss flying around. That's not the NFL. And the one year that Derrick was unreal in the pros, he had the best pass protection in the league. Remember? Yeah. It's like, and that's why it was such the irony of him breaking his ankle. Remember Donald Penn, like he hadn't given up a sack in like all of his starts so far with the Raiders, and the one time he does, kind of a freaky deal, his leg shatters, which is unlucky. But that's where I also think people counter and go, well, that's not a realistic way to play. Usually you're getting some pressure, and is he that good in the pressure? Because that's where he gets knocked, and he hasn't been lately.
Don Shula died on Monday, 90 years old. He last coached in 95, so we're each 10 or 11 years old. And I probably saw more Don Shula in Ace Ventura than I did like actually on the sidelines that I remember.
I kind of remember Jimmy Johnson as the Dolphins coach, like in the the 90s, the latter part of the 90s. Yeah.
But I mean, the record, winningest coach in NFL history. To me,
which is kind of crazy, right?
26 years in Miami, and how many years with the Colts?
We coached 31 years, so
okay, so
5 years.
2 losing seasons. That's an incredible stat. And the other thing, I saw a lot of what I learned about him is, Googled or watched on NFL films. But I guess Belichick passed him for postseason wins recently. And at the time when he tied him with 19 at the time, I don't know how many Bill has now. Somebody wrote an article that was like, that Shula's 19 is more impressive because in those days only, like 4 teams made the playoffs. And so you had to go to the playoffs more to get playoff wins, and the teams you played in the postseason were just better teams. The competition was stiffer because it was only
you weren't
truly
getting like
the
a
elite
6
of the elite. Yeah. But whatever. I mean, and here's the other thing that I did not realize when they go undefeated in 72, right? They win Super Bowl 7.
Mercury Morris,
Larry Zonka. They come back the next year, John, and win the Super Bowl again. Then the next year they go back to the Super Bowl again. They lost to Dallas, and they would end up losing a couple. They lost to Washington, and they lost to the Niners later. So he went to 5 in Miami. But to me, to win the Super Bowl in an undefeated season, then come back and win it the next year, and then take your team back there again.
I will say this about the 70s football. The high end of 70s football, those teams still get immense amount of respect now, right?
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh teams fucking stacked.
Right.
The John Madden Raiders teams absolutely loaded. We're just talking about the AFC. The Dolphins were a fucking powerhouse. And then if you did get to the NFC, the Super Bowl, Staubach and the Cowboys were clearly just an elite, just machine. The team that could never get over the hump but was excellent clearly was the Purple People Eaters with Minnesota. So even if the league had way less teams, the high end of the league was just – I mean, how many – I bet if we broke down the Cowboys, the Vikings, the Steelers, the Raiders, and the Dolphins, the amount of Hall of Famers involved would be like – I would just guess off the top of my head 35 individuals, right? And just think about how hard it was. The irony is, like, when you think about the 70s football too, which to me made like Don Shula a fucking legend. He won a Super Bowl going undefeated, and that's still a record that I have a hard time seeing it get broken. I'm not saying never because it is possible, but that Patriot team, it just shows you. One game situation, you're just a little off. It's so easy just to, even if it's not the Super Bowl, just a playoff game to not go perfectly.
And the margins, I went back, it's funny, today and watched like the 20-minute game condensed version on YouTube of the Monday Night Football game, Patriots-Ravens. The Patriots were 11-0, and the Ravens probably should have beat them. The Patriots got a holding call on 4th down, like in the red zone, that gave them a new set of downs, and they scored a touchdown to take the lead. They're down 24-20 with like 30 seconds left. But to your point, like just the little things that have to go your way over the course of 17 weeks.
But if you look at his numbers, he's pretty far away from Belichick. Like, does Belichick have 5 more seasons in him? The other thing is Belichick's been rattling off 12 and 13 win seasons. Like, what if he has a couple 8s? It's going to be hard to catch him.
Shula has 347. What's Bill have? Like
I thought it was like 280. Yeah, 270. And think how far Andy Reid has been a head coach for 20 years, probably averaging 10 wins a season.
Yeah.
It's like 201.
Yeah.
Like, I started thinking, who's fucking catching these guys? Who in the modern day, like, is big? If you had to bet right now, do you feel comfortable saying McVay or Kyle will get 200 wins?
How many years has Andy coached? Like, what was it, 13 in Philly and
14 in Philly, 7. He's already at 21. He's going into 22. He's probably got another 6, 7. I mean, he'll get around 30 coaching seasons, I would guess.
I feel like I'll know in like 7 years. So after like 7 years of it, so like I'll check back on Kyle in 5 years if he's still kind of doing his thing. Then I'd.
But
say,
think about this guy. It's like he starts. What was it, like 3 and 4 wins? So he's. Right. I mean, you don't really. He's at 7, and this year he's at 20. He's at 20.
Yeah.
Just to get to Andy where Andy is now. It's Shula. I don't even think it's fucking possible. Because think how many for Belichick to get to the high almost 3s. He had to have a 20-year stretch where they've missed the playoffs, I think, twice. And I think one year I read the average wins over that 20 years was like 12.2. Like that, it's just, I think we all acknowledge that, yeah, Belichick and Tom, like that 20-year run of being a 1 seed or 2 seed for fucking 10 straight years is never happening again. The factor in the division, it just was a perfect kind of culminate. They were good. Belichick was elite. I mean, just the whole thing. He had the best quarterback ever.
Right. Because you would say, does Andy have 20 more years in him?
No, to me, if Andy had been right now 55, you go, God, him and Mahomes could.
I think the question will be who does Andy hand the job off to at some point, and how much Pat Mahomes is left when that happens.
But even then, as you see with Shula, it took Greasy, and then I mean somewhat out of their control, Marino felt like a fucking rock to them. It's not like they just, they did one of those Red Auerbachs where they, were a playoff team and then had the third pick. No, they got Marino way at the end of the second or at the end of the first round, like pick 27, was it? Because it was like, is he on cocaine? What's his deal? And then as a rookie, right? Don't they go to the Super Bowl in '84? Was that his rookie year or was that his second year? I think it was the second year.
Washington won.
He threw 50 picks or he threw 50 touchdowns. Yeah, it would have been their draft was 83, right? So he would have been the fall of 83 as a rookie. And that would have been, I think, Raiders, Washington Redskins, where Marcus Allen has the crazy run. I think the next year then is Montana Marino, because Marino throws 50 picks as a second-year guy, just throwing
50 touchdowns.
Remember me and you before we interviewed him at the Super Bowl? You're like, check out this YouTube. You see Montana, it's like
we did. We watched both of them. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like Andy Dalton, but it doesn't look like he ain't throwing BBs. And then you just see Marino come in throwing like Aroldis Chapman. You're like, oh my God, just whew. I saw someone tweet the other night, like, I don't know if Marino quite gets enough respect. It was like his last year in Miami. So he retires in 95. I think Marino was like, definitely played a couple years for Jimmy Johnson, because I remember in the football life, him and Jimmy used to butt heads, because Marino was like Michael Jordan, like, let me shoot every time. Like, I want to fucking throw. And Jimmy was a little old school play D, run the ball. That's where you got to give Don Shula some credit. Like, they just opened up the fucking offense and let it fling it. Well, way before his time. Because, like, Jimmy Johnson would have been considered way more new school, right, than Don Shula. Probably had him, Don Shula's, I mean, even if Jimmy, let's say 70 now or late 60s, Don Shula was 20 plus years older than him. And most just football minds back in the 80s and 90s thought run the ball, play D. And Marino could barely move. He was a bad athlete at that time because his feet were all fucked up. But he could throw so hard. It was just woof, woof. You could say one of the upsets in sports history is that peak Marino and Don Shula, who was probably still on his game, did not win a Super Bowl, right? Because you just say one of the best coaches, he's easily a top 3 or 4 coach of all time, and peak Dan Marino from like the mid 80s to like 91, 92, you couldn't. That was the NFC was stacked, and that was the other thing. It's like the AFC wasn't quite as good in the 80s. It was the NFC.
Right.
Wonder if we really did a deep dive. I ended up watching the '89 draft maybe a couple weeks ago, and the Dolphins had passed on some players, and the Mel Kiper was just like, their defense is so terrible. How do you not take a defensive player? And I wonder if they got super offensive heavy under Marino, just throwing the ball. They drafted a running back, and their defense was terrible. So maybe they couldn't. They were like last in the league in pass defense. Like they couldn't stop anybody. And it's pretty clear you can't win that way, right? Big winners. Like you could have a double-digit win team, but it's gonna be hard to win the playoffs if you can't stop a soul.
Yeah,
it's my late 80s.
Not good.
No.
Sammy Smith with the 9th pick and Lewis Oliver, DB, with the 25th pick. Could have gotten Steve Atwater. They had the second best running back in that draft. Barry went one.
The top 5 of that draft was like Aikman, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, Deion Sanders were 4 of the 5 picks.
And Tony Mandarich, who was on the cover of SI, like people thought he was the offensive tackle from Michigan State, who was like going to be the guy. But you're right, that's the four Hall of Famers. Jeez, 5 Hall of Fame first round with Atwater. I watched it. There was an NFL Network thing, like look back at the Dolphins, and it wasn't just the 72 Dolphins. It was a couple weeks ago, and they were just talking about how hard their practices were. When Shula showed up, just how well they were just like so well conditioned because they had there were some days they had triple days. Shula was just whipping them into shape.
What do you think the weather was like in South Florida?
Oh, God. Here's the other thing, John. So John Carroll University, where Shula played and went to school.
Is that McDaniel's school?
McDaniel's, Nick Caserio, David Caldwell, Tom Telesco, 2 of the Chris Polian and Brian Polian, Greg Roman. I don't think no. There's 3 other current scouting.
Pelini's are like Youngstown State,
yeah. 3 other current scouting assistants. 1 with the Bears and 2 with the Patriots are John Carroll guys. And they have a couple players, like London Fletcher went to John Carroll. But the front office tree right now at John Carroll University is incredible. They got that's 3 GMs and a guy who can be a head coach whenever he wants to. One of the Polines was an assistant GM. The other one is a coach for what's his name at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly.
Yeah, he's special teams coach. He was used to be the head coach in Nevada, right?
Is that Polian?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Brian. So Chris is the guy that worked in the front office.
Yeah.
But it's wild.
You know, when like, how do I get involved in the NFL? What do I do? I'm just like, fuck, just go to John Carroll. They'll find you.
Just get attached to the right guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, Last Dance, episodes 5 and 6.
I mean, guy, I thought it was
What'd you like?
2 of the best hours of television I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't get
Do you notice this on Sunday nights? The first episode goes so fast.
It flies. I mean, it absolutely flies. I think the craziest thing is Michael Jordan used to lace his own shoes. Like, I mean, just for all the political and the golf and the gambling, Michael Jordan used to lace his own fucking tennis shoes. Like, I can't even fathom seeing like a Quinn Cook do that, let alone LeBron or Steph. They're going to lace their own shoes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you realize just normal task in different generations, like to those guys don't feel like, no, I don't lace my own shoes. You would just never do that now.
That was significant to me too, watching it. And maybe part of it is just the way he got his mind right was just doing this little thing that he's probably done since he started playing basketball. Also, Alyssa made this point. Do shoes come unlaced now? Like,
when we were growing up, when you ordered shoes or got a box of shoes, were they usually unlaced? Because I think they kind of were, thinking back.
Yeah, I think you had to lace them yourself.
I think you did too.
The other part is like, it was nice to see as it relates to the shoes, because I always hear women talk about it. Like, God, how is she wearing those heels? Like, women always think they're the only ones that can't that like heels kill their feet at the whatever they're doing. Like, God, how does she? And watching Jordan play in like his original shoes in '98.
Is that because they didn't have the padding or whatever? They weren't really as good.
They weren't as well padded, weren't as well structured.
He's older.
It's like her feet probably are killing her. She's just hiding it. And like, I think that too when you watch a guy like oh man, those are sweet. Like, no, the ones that Gruden wears, the Hokas, or the ones that Pete Carroll wears, those are the only ones that your feet will feel good in forever.
I think his interview with Ahmad Rashad about his gambling addiction, wearing the sunglasses, is one of the great all times. I'm a full blown addict, but I have to do this for PR. But I can't even look you in the eye. I can't even look you in the eye. I can't look you in the eye because I'm an addict.
Right before a game starts. How about he told Connie Chung, he's like, I'm not addicted to gambling. I'm just addicted to competition.
It's weird
which is true.
Yeah, I mean, we're in this sweet spot in gambling. And listen, I've been gambling since I was in my teens going to Cash Creek. I've had to pick and choose as I've gotten older and made a lot more money that I have to be careful about betting on games and stuff, because I can get like Mike too, where you just kind of chase. Like, I understand Pete Rose. Again, money's all relative. Like, once you don't get any juice from a $50 game, it goes to 100, it goes to 500. And Jordan's the same thing, betting on golf. And you hear stories about Phil Mickelson. Like, they do get, even guys with a lot of money get into situations where, God, I got to pay this guy $5 million. No different than if I had to give fucking, I put $2,000 into my bookie and I don't get, and it disappears. Like, you're like, fuck, what did I just do? I actually think it's he has relatable vices. I thought it was very refreshing to, like, people aren't gambling the amount of money he's gambling. And I forget who was being interviewed. Amount of money that he has. Yeah, like, it's so stupid. Like, it's just David Aldridge, like, it's $10 to you. Now, is it smart? But I think we're getting to this point where gambling's huge. I mean, they're part of, like, we have gambling ads when sports are going on our show. There are going to be people lose a lot of money. Now, some people can handle it, some people can't. But it just showed you, like, 30 years ago, like, I was a big, like, no one even talks about that now. Like, I'm licking my lips for gambling to become legal, you know? But it's dramatic like that. I don't think that would be a story now.
I do think Michael going to Atlantic City the night before a game would be a story.
He went with his dad, though.
Yeah, that's what he said. But then the report was like his dad, his family, and friends. But my point is this. I think if an NBA Finals game occurred, or in that case, an Eastern Conference Final game occurred, and the team loses, they're down 2-0, and the guy doesn't play great. And it comes out. Now, part of Jordan's thing is like, I was home by midnight. They say I was out till 2:30. Whatever. I'm just saying, I do think that would be a controversy today.
I would agree if Michael wasn't playing well. But back to like the Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, he was coming off fucking back-to-back MVPs, back-to-back Finals MVPs, back-to-back championships. It would just like, I'm sorry, Michael just gets the benefit of the doubt. It would have been controversial, but like Michael was the winner. He owned the league, so it's like, be like, yeah, he's kicking everyone's ass.
But I do think it would be. Maybe we'd eventually arrive at that conclusion, but that's not how it would start.
It would be a talking point.
Once he wins, like if he loses the series, then you look back and go, "Oh, that's awful." Now you win the series, then you win a chip. Okay.
There was a political element of the last night, but I think there's a bigger like Michael Jordan, whether it's his vices, whether it's just the way he acted, whether it was just the commercials, the branding was great, but you just see that like last night, and I think even Phil. They just felt a little more normal. Like it's like drinking Miller Lights. It just the NBA. Like you would never see an NBA player now drinking a beer. Like we all see them on Instagram. They all drink wine. It just kind of felt like, and even some of the previous ones from last week with Rodman, like they're drinking beers. Like that's what normal people like. Hey, you just win a game. Like here's some beers. Like that's what normal people do. That's what happens in baseball now.
And then jump on a motorcycle was Rodman.
It's like there's just some elements to now. I love golf. I love that Michael loves golf so much.
Yeah.
I think he is addicted. I think he's less addicted probably to, gambling is a huge part of his golfing, but golfing is just addicting if you're competitive because you're like, always think you can get better, but it's so hard. He can't.
The gambling makes him, the competition in and of itself for him is great, but the gambling it's the only way he can put the real pressure on himself.
Like, do you think he would get shit for playing golf? I mean, Steph plays golf all the time.
No.
He doesn't get any shit for that.
No. But like when they talk about, when Will Perdue tells a story about Jordan wanting to come play in their $1 blackjack hands just because he wants to have some of their money in his pocket. He couldn't do that a lot, but just as a, the $1 doesn't give him enough juice often, but just to occasionally have a little, just so he could talk shit to somebody. When he's throwing quarters with the security guards.
I'll give Ron Harper some credit. Like,
yeah.
If you compare the bankrolls, Ron Harper should not have been going dollar for dollar with Michael at the big boy table. You could argue Scotty, like, bro, you're on the fucking cheap contract. What are you doing? But, those guys, they all were the alphas on the team. Like, you can't let Michael, like, okay, you want to go? Like, who's going to play with? Like, fucking Bushler, Steve Kerr, Weddington, Purdue. Like, they ain't playing with him. Fills up fucking reading Zen Master shit. Like, that's his only option would to be Scotty and Ron Harper. They probably had no business relative. Like, at least now you have multiple max guys on every team because there are definitely games going on now on NBA planes that are just astronomical amounts of money, right?
Right.
Like $50,000 for nice games.
Your poor guys are richer.
Way richer. I mean, your mid-level exception guys making $9 million.
The NBA salary has gone up faster than inflation, right?
And that's why I think, you've heard some stories historically about guys getting in, some questionable fights. They had the gun incident in Washington. I just think sometimes when it's one thing to talk a big game about it, and this gets back to gambling. It's another thing then to be like, you now owe me again, money's all relative. I need $200,000 that you lost to me, right? $200,000. You're like, fuck you, motherfucker. I'm not paying you. And it's not like there's no legal binding contract. You just see how this shit can. That's why a lot of people like put the money on the fucking table. It's because I'm taking it, right? There's no IOUs.
I want a documentary on the Hustlers. Who was that guy? What was that guy's name? Like Simbahar?
Well, people were also like, one of the big things was Michael, and this happened to Phil. Like, they're with sketchy characters. Well, if you want to bet like $1 million on something, who the fuck you think you're hanging out with? You're not just, just Joe Schmo businessman, just ready to roll
but also,
$1 million in a golf game.
Yeah, Jordan it's not that like Jordan's hanging out of that guy's house. It's like Jordan has a guy who's like, hey man, I need to find a big money game, and someone goes, yeah, I know a guy who'll do a big money game with you, and then they bring that guy, and Jordan has a big money game, and that's how they meet.
What happened to Phil too with all the insider trading guy, the guy that got all the trouble? Because if you're dealing with 7-figure gambling, right? I'm talking 7 figures on a golf match, on football games. Like, you're just if you're not going to go through the MGM Grand, you're going to get a guy that's closer to the mob than is the fucking Supreme Court, right? You're going to get a questionable character. And that guy usually, if it's, I mean, I would imagine Michael, a lot of gambling, same with Phil over the years. If I'm giving you $1 million or $5 million or whatever I owe you, Michael ain't reporting that to taxes. And, you start adding it up. That's why when the feds do get involved, and I don't know if they technically got involved in Michael, Phil's got it a lot worse than Michael ever did, right? I mean, Phil fucking might have gone down for insider trading for a second with that guy that got in all the trouble in Vegas because he was paying him like $4 million just in cash. And then you get in kind of these weird situations where, in fairness, I think Michael and Phil are like, I barely know the motherfucker. You're acting like I know him like I know Scottie Pippen or something. That's bullshit. But it's like, well, you were around him for 18 holes. Fuck, I've played golf with a lot of people over the years that I wouldn't say I know well, or in gamble, even if I gambled like $10 on that round.
Sure.
Well, imagine if that number was $100,000 and I lost. I gave the guy money. You're like, who'd you give the money to? Like, fuck, I didn't even know the guy. He was Billy's friend. I got invited to play Pebble, and the fucker was there.
Right.
I actually am surprised more of these guys don't get involved with more shady characters.
Well, they probably do.
Or you learn to siphon them out.
Well, that's one thing he said, right? The guy who wrote the book, Jordan's like, I learned a lesson. That's why he loves Chuck.
Well, also, don't you think it's why those guys have such big trust issues?
Absolutely.
Like, you and I have been through a couple business things in the media where it shapes your opinion. I can't imagine on the level, and it shapes me just a little less maybe naive than I used to be. We look at something maybe a little differently. Can you imagine on the level of like your career might end? You at least at one point in time it crossed your mind, or like, am I going to get in trouble with the law? Like, how would you trust anyone?
Marrying somebody who knows how much money you make.
Well, that's the other thing.
When
it's
you
like
meet,
you do. That's. It can't be easy being I'll defend NBA players on this. If you become a max NBA player and are single, like, how are you going to meet someone just like, we met organically? Yeah, you just saw eye to eye.
That's why you did a movie star.
It's one thing to like, you hear it a lot, like with businessmen, like when she was young, she made more money than me. It's just when you're talking to low numbers, it's like, yeah, when we met, I was making $27 million a year.
And everyone knew it.
Well, yeah, who the fuck else is, even if you married the most impressive chick in town, like a partner at a law firm, that it would be hard if you're like a 28-year-old guy to meet a woman that's making like $1 million. And even if she was making $1 million, you'd still be making 27 times more than her. It's difficult. I feel they're first world problems.
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest takeaways, I've always, like, Jordan going to baseball is one of the big sports stories in the history of sports, right? And there's always been
what was the team called?
The Birmingham Barons.
Francona, head coach or manager.
Francona, yeah. White Sox, double A? Single A? Double A?
Yeah. I think it was double A, yeah.
But like that story is always like, was it a secret banishment because of Jordan's gambling problems? That story I've always been interested in, but I didn't live it. I don't really know everything. I don't really have an opinion on that. I've always kind of felt like just generally conspiracy theories. I go, yeah, probably not. But I don't know. Enough people think it's real. I do think watching episodes 5 and 6 of The Last Dance, it's pretty clear to me that Michael was ready to walk away from basketball and thought he was ready to walk away and never return. And so I do believe
I saw John Stockton today. They wanted to interview John Stockton desperately for this documentary. He turned down the guy for like 2 straight years. And today, I think one of the guys on like Fox Sports Radio over the weekend had the producer, whatever the guy's name is that ran the documentary. Yeah. He said that I finally got Stockton on the phone. He said, listen, man, I'm not going to do your documentary. I'm not going to be part of a 10-hour Michael Jordan puff piece. So if you want to put your journalist hat on, you go, well, Michael did. I don't know. He didn't control it, but
Mariotti wrote something apparently similar to that.
Once he starts giving in and Michael is being great, you have to work with him, right? Because he's scratching your back a little bit. You're not, and there are just elements of, because my counter would be, are you telling me you've set up fucking 6 hours this documentary? He's the most maniacal, competitive human that everyone we've ever seen. We're like, even diehard sports fans now in 2020, we've read a lot of shit. We've seen a lot of shit. And it's glaring. This guy is nuts, right? And he's just like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, but
I'm not disputing that it was wearing him out, but he just like, I'm out of here.
So
because the other element that's going to come up, his dad gets killed in this gambling on the side of the road, and then he quits. And then he's just playing baseball.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten there yet, so we'll see. But two things. One, it's not that he's. I have seen a lot of that, like Jordan's controlling the narrative, but a lot of this footage is from then. Makes it pretty clear that he's worn down and hates a lot of what's going on.
His interviews with the bloodshot eyes, is he drunk or high?
Yeah, but those
are playing a huge role in the show.
No, there's no doubt. I'm just saying, watching the footage then is stuff that I've never really seen, and you watch it and go, yeah, this guy looks like he's ready to try something different. Secondarily, the value of Michael Jordan to David Stern. Like, if David Stern had the option
that's where it made no
to
sense.
secretly suspend Michael and cover it up, or cover it up and not secretly suspend Michael, I think he would have covered it up and not secretly suspended Michael.
One thing, conspiracy theory that I heard, or I think I've read, and people have talked about this, there might have been a punishment coming Michael's way. Like, hey, man, like David was pissed. It sounds weird to even say that. Like, was just mad for making the league look bad or whatever. Was going to give him a fine or maybe even just like a 2-game suspension. And Michael did like a fuck you on principle. Or maybe they had a meeting and it went kind of bad, which I think that to me is somewhat
plausible,
believable.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're going to give you $1 million fine. Michael's like, I can't afford to give him. I owe this shady guy $1 million. I owe this guy shady guy $1 million. But I think it's fair. There are some red flags around it. Is it conspiracy on the crazy part? No. Is it as pure as he just wanted out? No, I think it's somewhere probably in the middle. Because you can't tell me the dad just dead on the side of the road.
But again, like I know what I've kind of read. That's what's great about this doc is for people like us. There's people who really did Michael, and there's people who have no idea. And then there's people like us in our age range that like, yeah, I loved Michael, and I had a Michael jersey, and I wanted the shoes, and I wanted Gatorade, but I wasn't living. I was just a kid who loved Michael Jordan. I wasn't reading. I didn't read the Jordan rules at the time. I didn't know about Jerry Krause. I wasn't like. I might have listened to sports talk. I did as a kid, but I didn't really understand what was happening then the way.
I don't think sports talk was as deep either.
I mean, I called a sports talk station. They let me on, so that tells you what they were screening.
I did too.
But so that's what's been great about this for me. And I think his dad's death is another one of those things that I know it's weird, and I know there's a bunch of versions, right? But I wasn't there. I didn't live it then and really understand the context of kind of how it all unfolded. But
I've enjoyed
the Kukoc thing. I've seen some of that stuff before, but that was still great. The way they just went at anybody who represented Jerry Krause is just incredible.
The other thing I love how I could see Phil. I don't know if they have computers back then, or maybe just like giving them all the scouting reports on every dude Jerry Krause loves. Like, Jerry told me that if we could ever get a hold of this guy,
Marley?
It'd always be the guy they're playing. Like Michael Jordan's like, yeah, we knew Jerry Krause loved him. Like, you have his fucking scouting reports? Like, how do you know every team is like, oh, Jerry loved him. Jerry loved him. We're going to fuck him up.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
The Tony part was cool. It's like, yeah, this guy, his worn, torn country has probably seen dudes get executed in front of him from like 5 years old till then. And then when they were like, yeah, he kind of bounced back. We're like, even Michael mentioned, he's like, damn, this Tony guy kind of not bad showing. I forgot they played again.
The best part about that to me that I didn't know, a lot of that stuff I think maybe it's in the Team USA doc that came out a few years ago on NBA TV. But the part where it becomes clear that like they're about to ambush Tony Kukoc. Like Tony Kukoc has no idea that he's part of some controversy back in Chicago. He has no idea that the fact that Jerry Krause came and visited him in the middle of Scottie Pippen's contract issue, like he has no idea that that's a thing. And all of a sudden, like these guys are just trying to take his head off.
Well, you tweeted this a while ago, and it's so true. You and I had a management issue, and I think a lot of people have listened, or that are listening or are going to watch this, have been in a situation where you just don't see eye to eye with your boss. And if it doesn't get back on track, it gets dramatically worse. And I think it's fair to say I've never been in like a toxic relationship, but you hear a lot of stories about people in marriages that just go the wrong way. That was in 92. Like, they were at Jerry Krause. They didn't like him in 92. They went through 98. And it was not like an everyday, like,
and it
those
wasn't
are long
new in
days
92
and weeks. And I mean, that's to have that much animosity. That is insanity. And it's not like, Jerry wasn't even around that much. Every fucking video, Jerry Krause is standing right there. It's like you couldn't get away from him.
How about the interview he does was that after the Portland championship where he's like adamant. Teams are important, but this is a top-down organization. The top-down. Jerry Reinsdorf on down. It's like, yeah, well, you're number 2. Everybody, top to bottom. I was like, this guy's insane. What are you?
I think that's the quote that pissed him off for that like double down. Because remember, one of the first documentaries, one of the first episodes, Michael was like, why did he even say that?
Yeah.
So I think Jerry being so insecure, like, we're getting the big stories, but I think they were just constant, like, we love this guy in the draft. We think he's going to be our next member. And that's where I think Michael was always so mad. Like, motherfucker, we've been winning for you. Why don't you never say, God, I love Michael? And it's not even, Michael doesn't need a little HJ, but it's more like, what the fuck's your problem, bro? You're always around. You're always looking at us. Then I'd say, well, part of it, Michael, you're being an asshole to him. So I think that's his way to get back at you. It's kind of like, you're just being passive aggressive with your shots. Michael's not. He's always making short jokes. But what's Jerry going to say? Fuck you? No, he can't. Well, what he can say is, I think Tony can be a big 3. I think Tony has a chance to be an all-time great Bull. And they're like, what?
By the way, he didn't become an all-time great, but he nailed that one. Jerry nailed a lot of decisions.
Well, Jerry's pretty good, guy. Hired Phil, got Tony, got
Tim
Rodman.
Floyd was a bad one,
but it never went down, right?
No, he hired Tim Floyd.
Well, I saw Tim Floyd say that they tried to hire him in 89 and 96. It didn't go down.
Yeah, but eventually he replaced Phil.
He did, but at least they got 6 rings before.
That's the other part, that, like, the fact that Jordan left and Phil still was there through, like, we're kind of lucky, right, that Phil was still the coach of the Bulls when Jordan wanted to come back, whatever it was, 18 months later after he leaves. Like, Krause didn't take the opportunity to reset the whole thing right then and there. It's kind of crazy.
What about Michael not really kissing Kobe's ass? He kind of big leagued him in the hallway. He was kind of nice to him.
Initially,
he wasn't
yeah,
like,
19.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't Mr. Lover.
I could get a whole documentary that's just like locker room footage of guys talking, them talking about Kobe. Like 3 times in a row, he's not getting the ball back. Right? Was Jordan's comment. Magic coming in, all that stuff. The All-Star game
because
locker
people
room.
forget when Kobe showed up, he kind of went Babe Ruth calling a shot, right? Like, motherfucker, I'm here. I'm gonna be the next that guy. And Michael already hates that type shit. You're gonna be next me. And then you're watching him. He's just gunning, but he is so good. And then you didn't know that much about him. It's not like, well, guys, he has a historical work ethic. You're gonna have to fucking kill him. He's tough as nails. No one knows that shit yet. He's just like this 19-year-old kid, cocky as a motherfucker. But you could say, because it actually turned out to be like his defining characteristic. But a lot of guys, they go the other way, right? That works against them, and he just refused to fail.
Did I watch this? They didn't have Jordan's. I must have been Van Pelt afterwards that they played some of Jordan's speech from Kobe's memorial service.
Yeah,
not in the thing. Yeah.
I think what Kobe. One thing I think what Kobe's saying, like, I'm everything because of him. I don't necessarily think it was just purely like their relationship. I just think Kobe's like, everything he did, I wanted to emulate. So when I heard these stories about this motherfucker being in the gym when other guys weren't, I was going to do that. Like, I think, I don't think they're like texting all the time or calling, right?
Well, there was some of that. Remember, Michael talks about it in his speech that, like, he'd get a text
as the relationship grew. But I think when Kobe was developing the Mamba mentality, like as a young guy, Michael wasn't like fucking calling them. They weren't boys. Well, it was more, I'm just going to do what this guy does.
Yeah, and part of that is just, this guy showed me the blueprint. Like, all my moves, I got them from him. Like, how could I? He gave me the blueprint. The blueprint was there for everybody to see. I had the ability to copy it.
And I mean, if Kobe, Michael, and even LeBron, if there would have been more sweet overlap. I mean, there was with Kobe and LeBron, but their teams never matched up, right? Yeah. And even Kobe and Michael, that was his second year. It was 98. It was over. And then I don't even count the Wizards.
Right.
If there would have been, I think if Kobe would have been like 3 years older, or Michael just would have had a little longer career.
I did think that, like, the fact that the Lakers, like, how sweet if the Lakers and Bulls had met in the finals.
Yeah, or even like.
But if Michael had stuck around, if Phil had stayed, if Michael had stayed and played, Michael might have played 3. I mean, who knows? Would he have played 3 more years in Chicago?
What if the Heat had been a little better, or the Cavs had been a little better, and they could have played the Lakers and beat the Celtics?
Yeah.
We would have get kind of a younger, sweet LeBron, and he just would have had his moment like Jordan against Magic and Larry, where you never really got LeBron against Kobe. It's always, I love when those things kind of cross over. Right. The eras.
Yeah.
But beggars can't be choosers.
I'm gonna start throwing quarters around the house. Is that game just whoever can get it to stay closest to the wall or touching the wall?
Just a purely made up game to bet.
Right? You're just trying to get as close to the wall as possible.
I mean, ideally you want to hug the wall, or just
maybe it has to be touching the wall.
I think it was just the closest to the wall wins.
I love that game.
Yeah, I mean it's just the basic level of gambling, right?
Who
can throw a ball farther? Like the most basic level of any gambling is like, who's faster? Who can throw? Who's stronger? Right. Who can do this? And then it gets to, as games get developed, like a football game, like what team do you want? Remember, really, I'd say gambling started with fighting. Like this guy's fighting this guy. What guy do you want? And then baseball was big.
Chickens.
Baseball, yeah. This is like the 1800s. Then baseball gets developed in fucking 18 whatever. You start betting on teams, and then as the money gets upped, you get a little corruption.
Yeah, horse racing.
When did the scandal happen with Ty Cobb? 1919?
1919, yeah. Black Sox. Yeah. I was just gonna say, I remember a few years traveling around when I was doing the minor league arena football. Those guys would always play dice in the hallway of the motels, and I always wanted to like just hang out and watch, but I never quite understood what was happening, and so I never did. I guess I could.
Were they playing to a number?
I don't know how I've never Googled it. Maybe it's easy how throwing dice works.
Well,
but
like a big game,
throwing dice down the hallway.
Well, I know a big game at like my brother's country club and just a couple country clubs I've been to is liar's dice. You get the little cup with 5 dice in.
Oh yeah.
You shake it and you put it down and then you hold it up. So everyone puts 20 or 40 in the pot, and you just go around and you just say like, there are 5 sets of 5 dice, so there are 25 dice. And you just say like 4 fours, and you keep building up.
People
right?
just
then you
bet
say
on whether you're telling the truth or not.
Well, no. You just say 4 fours. Then it goes to the next guy, and he would say like 5 sixes, and you just keep having to up the number 6 something or a higher number, and then eventually I can call you out. So if you go 7 sixes, I go bullshit or liar. We all lift up, and if you were wrong and there aren't 7 sixes, you have to take one of your dice away. If I called you out and you were right, I got to take one of my dice away. And the last guy standing wins the pot.
Okay.
That's liar's dice. Gotcha. And it's an easy gambling over fucking drinks at a country, it happens at a lot of country clubs.
It's like playing war, but a little more complicated.
Yeah, but once you start playing, it's really not complicated. It's all kind of a math equation, but it's just kind of a feel of bluffing and shit.
That's fun.
It gets juiced up fast. Yeah. Like you just throw some cash around.
That's good.
I'm sure Michael's played it many times.
All right. On that note, adios pelota. We'll get some other videos to put up on YouTube, so we'll get to that. If you're listening to this and you haven't gone to the YouTube channel, or if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed,
yeah, subscribe to them both.
Holla at you boys.
We got a fire down in the marina.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Would you jump out of your window if you had to save your life?
Fire escape.
Oh, so you're good then.
Kind of high.
I've thought about that. I'm 3rd floor. What if I can't get out? I need a rope.
You gotta get the Alex Smith leg injury.
I know.
Way down at best.
Adios.
Later.